Keanu Reeves goes undercover to investigate his own coffee chain. Keanu Reeves sat in his sleek downtown office, staring at yet another troubling report about Morning Haven, the coffee empire he had built from the ground up. Customer complaints were piling up. Rude service, unmotivated staff, a drop in sales. His regional managers gave him the same tired excuses. Supply chain issues, tough competition, changing market trends. But Keanu wasn't buying it. He had always trusted his gut, and right now it told him something was rotting from the inside. If he wanted the truth, he needed to see it for himself, unfiltered, raw, and up close. So he did what no CEO in his position would ever dare. He became David, a nobody. Dressed in worn-out jeans, a faded hoodie, and a scruffy fake beard, he walked into one of his own Morning Haven locations, just another customer blending into the crowd. The scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, but something was off. The energy felt stale. The employees moved with sluggish indifference. He tightened his jaw, scanning the room. This wasn't the thriving, welcoming place he had envisioned. Then, just as he was about to step in line, something happened that stopped him cold. Something that confirmed his worst suspicions. Keanu witnesses a shocking act of cruelty. Keanu Reeves, hidden beneath his disguise as David, had barely settled into the line when the moment that would define his mission unfolded before him. The cafe doors swung open with a soft chime, and in stepped a man who looked like he had weathered more storms than the sky itself. His clothes were tattered, his hair unkempt, and in his trembling hands he clutched a plastic bag like it held the last remnants of his dignity. He hesitated near the entrance, his eyes scanning the room as if hoping for a sliver of kindness in a world that had long since turned its back on him. Keanu watched, his grip tightening in his pockets. The man took a cautious step forward and approached the counter, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Could I just get a cup of water?" His request was simple, basic, human. Before the cashier could respond, a sharp voice cut through the air like a blade. "Hey, you... out?" Keanu turned to see Olivia, the store's manager, striding toward the man, her arms crossed, her expression a mask of disgust. The cafe, previously humming with casual conversation, went eerily still. The man flinched, his fingers tightening around his bag. I'm not causing any trouble," he stammered. "Just a little water. Then I'll go." Olivia rolled her eyes. "This isn't a shelter. We don't serve people like you here," she snapped. "Get lost before I call the cops." The words hit Keanu like a sucker punch. He felt his stomach knot, a slow burn of anger igniting in his chest. He glanced around the cafe. The other customers avoided eye contact, staring down at their drinks or their phones, unwilling to get involved. The young cashier at the counter looked frozen, clearly uncomfortable, but too afraid to speak up. The homeless man's shoulders slumped, defeat etched into every weary line of his face. I'm sorry," he muttered, already turning toward the door, already preparing to be discarded like trash. Keanu couldn't stay silent. "Wait." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried, slicing through the air with quiet authority. Olivia's head snapped toward him, her eyes narrowing. "This doesn't concern you," she hissed. Keanu took a step forward. "It does now." Keanu goes undercover as an employee. The tension in Morning Haven still crackled in the air long after Keanu Reeves had stepped in to stop Olivia from humiliating the homeless man. He had bought the man a meal, made sure he had a seat, and watched as the cafe slowly returned to its usual rhythm. But Keanu knew the damage ran deeper than one cruel moment. This place wasn't just suffering from poor service, it had lost its soul. If he truly wanted to fix it, he needed to see the rot from the inside. The next morning, Keanu Reeves didn't walk into Morning Haven as the owner. He walked in as David, the new guy. He had pulled strings overnight, arranged everything quietly through his corporate team, just enough to make it look like a routine hire. A plain t-shirt, a worn-out cap pulled low, and an apron draped over his front. No celebrity aura, no special treatment, just another employee stepping into the grind. He approached Olivia, who barely glanced up from her phone, her thumbs tapping away with disinterest. "Hey, I'm David," he said, shifting his weight like an uncertain newbie. "They told me to check in with the manager." Olivia let out an exasperated sigh. "Great, another one." She waved lazily toward the counter. "Shadow Emily for now. She'll show you the ropes." She didn't ask about his experience, didn't bother with introductions, just dismissed him like he was nothing more than an inconvenience. Keanu clenched his jaw, keeping his cover intact. Emily, young, overworked, but kind, shot him a sympathetic look. "Hey, David, welcome to the chaos," she said, handing him an apron. "It's a lot, but I'll help you through it." Keanu immediately liked her. There was something in the way she moved, quick, precise, yet burdened by an invisible weight. As she guided him through the rush, he noticed it all. The way the espresso machine sputtered, barely maintained. The way Olivia barked orders, but never lifted a finger. The way the staff walked on eggshells, afraid to make a mistake. And Emily? She was the glue holding everything together. She handled customers with warmth, cleaned up spills without complaint, covered for others when they fell behind. But Keanu also saw the cracks in her resolve. The way her hands trembled when Olivia snapped at her in front of a full line of customers. The way she forced a smile, even when exhaustion painted shadows under her eyes. Then came the breaking point. A sharply dressed woman stormed up to the counter, slamming her cup down. "This is not what I ordered," she hissed. "I asked for soy milk, not this sugary garbage. I'm a regular here. You should know my order by now." Emily immediately reached for the cup. "I'm so sorry, ma'am, let me fix that." But before she could, Olivia swooped in. "What's wrong with you today?" she scolded loudly, making sure the entire cafe heard. "You're making us look bad. Fix it, now." Emily's face burned with humiliation. Keanu's hands clenched into fists inside his apron pockets. He had seen enough. This wasn't just bad management. This was abuse. And Olivia's reign? It was about to end. Keanu reveals himself and fires Olivia. The air in Morning Haven felt like it could snap in half. The moment Olivia humiliated Emily in front of the entire cafe, Keanu Reeves knew he had seen enough. His blood simmered as he clenched his fists in his apron pockets, forcing himself to keep his cool. For the past 2 days, he had watched this place rot from the inside. Staff walking on eggshells, Olivia ruling with an iron fist wrapped in apathy, customers treated like an afterthought. But this was the last straw. Before Keanu could step in, the cafe doors swung open and a young mother walked in, a toddler clinging to her leg. She looked exhausted, her coat frayed at the edges, a diaper bag slung over her shoulder. She stepped up to the counter, shifting her weight as the little boy began to fuss. "Just a small coffee, please," she said, her voice tired but polite. Emily reached for the register, ready to ring her up. But then the toddler's quiet whimpers turned into sharp cries, echoing through the cafe. Keanu's stomach tightened. He barely had time to process it before Olivia's head snapped up like a predator locking onto prey. "Oh, hell no." She stormed toward the woman, her arms crossed. "You need to take that noise outside. This isn't a daycare." The mother looked up, her cheeks flushing red. I'm sorry, he's just tired. I'll calm him down in a second." She rocked the toddler in her arms, whispering to him, trying to soothe him. Olivia rolled her eyes, voice rising. "I don't care. Paying customers don't want to hear your kids screaming. Get out." Silence. The cafe had gone completely still. Even customers who had previously ignored Olivia's behavior now watched in stunned disbelief. The mother hesitated, gripping her son tighter. "I just need a minute. I'll leave after I get my coffee." Emily, trembling but still standing her ground, took a step forward. "Olivia, it's fine," she said, her voice shaking. "I'll get her order quickly. She's not bothering anyone." That was it, Olivia snapped. She whirled on Emily, her eyes burning with rage. "Excuse me? You don't tell me what's fine. You keep mouthing off and you'll be out of a job." Emily flinched, but for the first time she didn't back down. "She's a customer," she whispered. "We don't treat people like this." Keanu had heard enough. He stepped forward, tossing his rag onto the counter. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the air like a blade. "Stop." Olivia spun to face him, irritation flashing across her face. "You again? Stay out of this, newbie, or you're done too." Keanu took a deep breath. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, he reached up, pulling off his cap. The fake, scruffy beard came next, peeled away in one smooth motion. His glasses clattered onto the counter. The transformation was instant. Gone was David, the quiet, unassuming new hire. In his place stood Keanu Reeves, the Keanu Reeves, the owner of Morning Haven. A gasp rippled through the cafe. Emily's mouth fell open, her eyes darting between him and Olivia. Customers whispered, pulling out their phones, some snapping pictures, others just staring in shock. Olivia's smirk vanished, the blood drained from her face. Keanu's voice was calm, steady, but edged with steel. "I own this place," he said, "all 15 of them, and I've spent the last 2 days watching you tear it apart." The weight of his words hung in the air, pressing down on Olivia like a vice. She blinked, opened her mouth, then shut it again. Keanu turned to the staff, then to the customers. "I'm sorry you've had to deal with this," he said, his voice carrying through the cafe. "This is not what Morning Haven stands for." Then he turned back to Olivia, locking eyes with her. "You're done," he said. "Fired, effective immediately." The cafe erupted. Some staff members froze, cups clattering to the floor. Customers murmured, some in disbelief, others in approval. The young mother still stood by the counter, her toddler now quiet as she stared in stunned silence. Emily clapped a hand over her mouth, tears brimming in her eyes. But Olivia? Olivia laughed. It was a harsh, jagged sound filled with anger and disbelief. She grabbed her phone, stepping forward, voice dripping with venom. "You can't just fire me like this," she spat. "I've kept this dump running while you sit in your fancy office." Keanu didn't flinch. "You had chances to do better," he said. "You chose to bully your staff, scare off customers, and destroy what this place is supposed to be. I decide who stays. And you?" He tilted his head slightly. "You're gone." Something in his voice must have finally hit home because Olivia's face twisted with fury. She shoved past Emily hard enough to make her stumble. "I'm not leaving," Olivia sneered. "Call the cops if you want. I'll sue you for everything." Keanu took a step forward, his stance unwavering. Leave now or security's next. For a moment it seemed like Olivia might explode. Then, with one last furious glare, she grabbed her bag and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. Silence settled over the cafe. Keanu exhaled, then turned to Emily. She was still standing there, still in shock, but when she met his eyes, something shifted. A flicker of hope. He gave her a small nod. "It's over," he said. But deep down he knew this was just the beginning. Keanu fires Olivia and begins the rebuild. The door slammed shut behind Olivia, the sound echoing through Morning Haven like the final note of a long, sour song. For a moment the entire cafe seemed frozen in time, every customer, every employee processing what had just happened. Keanu Reeves, yes, that Keanu Reeves, had just fired the manager in the middle of a packed coffee shop. Then, all at once, the tension broke. A few customers let out small cheers, others whispered in hushed voices. The young mother, who had nearly been kicked out, stood near the counter holding her son, eyes wide with disbelief. Emily looked like she might collapse from sheer exhaustion and relief. Keanu ran a hand through his hair, exhaling as he surveyed the cafe. The weight of what he had just done settled on him, but there was no regret, only certainty. Olivia had to go. She had poisoned this place for too long. He turned to the employees. Their faces were a mix of shock, uncertainty, and most importantly, hope. "All right," he said, clapping his hands together once. "Let's get back to work." The cafe slowly stirred back to life. Customers returned to their conversations, though they occasionally threw glances at Keanu, clearly still trying to process the fact that John Wick had just pulled an undercover boss move in real life. But the real work was only beginning. A new beginning. Keanu pulled Emily aside near the espresso machine. She was still visibly shaken, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for a towel to wipe down the counter. "You okay?" he asked gently. Emily nodded quickly, but the tear brimming in her eye betrayed her. "Yeah, I didn't think anyone would ever stand up to her." Keanu smiled softly. "You did." She let out a short laugh, shaking her head. "Yeah, and almost lost my job because of it." Keanu leaned against the counter, folding his arms. "You didn't lose anything today, Emily. In fact, I'd say you earned something." Her brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" Keanu took a deep breath. "I need someone to help rebuild this place, someone who actually cares, someone who doesn't just bark orders but leads by example." He met her eyes. "I want you to be the new assistant manager." Emily blinked. "Me? You?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time since he had met her, she was speechless. "But I don't have experience." "You have heart," Keanu cut in. "I've seen the way you handle customers, the way you step up when no one else will. That's what this place needs, not another Olivia, someone who actually gives a damn." Emily swallowed hard, glancing around the cafe, at the staff who still looked shaken but oddly lighter, freer. She looked back at Keanu, searching his face. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." A single tear slipped down her cheek before she quickly wiped it away and nodded. "Then, yeah, okay, I won't let you down." Keanu grinned. "I know you won't." Addressing the staff, he turned to the rest of the employees. "Everyone, listen up." The baristas stopped what they were doing, shifting nervously as Keanu addressed them. He could tell they weren't sure what was coming next. More change, more stress. "I know today was crazy," he started, "and I know a lot of you probably didn't expect your shift to involve watching your boss get fired in the middle of a rush." A few chuckles rippled through the group. Good, they needed to breathe again. "But I also know that this place hasn't been what it should be," he continued, his voice growing steadier. Morning Haven was built on the idea that coffee shops should feel like home, a place where everyone is welcome, whether they have a suit on or they're just looking for a warm drink and a place to sit. Somewhere along the way, we lost that. He let that sink in. "The changes now." A few heads nodded. "I'm bringing in a new manager," Keanu announced. "Her name is Clara. She's been running our downtown location, and she knows how to lead, not just manage." There were murmurs among the staff. Some of them looked relieved, others wary. Change wasn't easy, but Keanu wasn't finished. Until then, Emily stepping up as assistant manager. Emily shifted uncomfortably under the weight of their attention, but Keanu caught the faint flicker of pride in her eyes. "If you have concerns, if you have ideas, if you have anything you want to say, my door is open," Keanu added. "We're going to fix this place, but I can't do it alone." For the first time, real hope flickered across their faces. The aftermath. By the time the cafe closed that night, Keanu was exhausted. He sat in his car, staring at the glow of Morning Haven through the windshield. 2 days ago, he had walked into his own coffee shop disguised as a stranger. Now, he had torn it down to its bones so he could build it back up the way it was always meant to be. And yet there was still a storm brewing. He could feel it. The next morning, before heading back to the cafe, Keanu got a text from one of his regional managers. "Olivia's been seen near the shop, talking to someone." His jaw tightened. He thought she was gone. Apparently, he was wrong. Something told him this wasn't over. Not yet. Keanu uncovers a betrayal and stands by Emily. Keanu Reeves had barely taken a sip of his morning coffee when his phone buzzed. "Olivia's been seen near the shop, talking to someone." He stared at the message, his gut tightening. He had fired Olivia in front of a full cafe. She had stormed out in rage, swearing she would make him regret it. He knew she wouldn't go down quietly. But hanging around Morning Haven? That wasn't just bitter resentment. That was planning something. Keanu exhaled and ran a hand through his hair. He had come to fix one coffee shop, but it seemed like the poison Olivia had spread wasn't gone just yet. By the time he arrived at Morning Haven, the place was already buzzing with the morning rush. The new energy in the cafe was noticeable. Emily was stepping up. Clara, the new manager, was set to arrive soon. And, for the first time in a long time, customers were being greeted with real smiles. But something felt off. As Keanu walked toward the side entrance, he caught a glimpse of movement through the window. Emily. She was outside, her phone pressed to her ear, pacing nervously near the alley. Keanu slowed his steps, watching. Her shoulders were tense, her free hand fisted at her side. Then he heard it. "I told you I can't," she whispered urgently. "They trust me now, stop pushing." A cold knot formed in Keanu's chest. Was she talking to Olivia? His heart pounded. Emily turned and spotted him through the glass. For a split second she froze. Then, in a rush, she ended the call and shoved her phone into her pocket, forcing a too-casual smile as she slipped back inside. But Keanu had seen it. The flicker of panic in her eyes. Something was wrong. The confrontation. Keanu waited until the rush died down, then pulled Emily aside into the small back office. She shifted uncomfortably as he shut the door. "What's up?" she asked, feigning innocence. Keanu leaned against the desk, arms crossed. He wasn't angry yet, but he needed the truth. "I heard you outside," he said evenly. "Who were you talking to?" Emily's face paled. "No one. It was just..." "Emily," his voice was softer now, but firm. "Was it Olivia?" She opened her mouth, hesitated, then let out a shaky breath, sinking into the chair. She looked down, twisting her fingers together. "Yes." Keanu felt a weight settle in his chest. "Why?" he asked. Emily swallowed hard. "She's been calling me," she admitted. "Threatening me. She says if I don't help her, if I don't feed her information about what's happening here, she'll tell everyone that I stole money from the register, that she has proof." Keanu's stomach twisted. "That's not true." Emily let out a humorless laugh. "Of course it's not true. But if she tells people, if she spreads that lie, I need this job, Keanu. My brother's in school. I help with rent. I can't afford for people to doubt me." She looked up, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. "I thought I could handle it, that if I just kept her calm, she'd leave me alone." Keanu exhaled slowly, running a hand over his jaw. He understood now. Emily wasn't betraying him. She was scared. And Olivia had used that fear against her. Keanu stands by Emily. Keanu crouched so he was at eye level with Emily. "Listen to me," he said, his voice calm but full of resolve. "You don't have to deal with this alone. Olivia's not going to touch you. Not now, not ever." Emily let out a shaky breath. "But what if..." "She has no proof, because there's nothing to prove," Keanu interrupted. "She's bluffing. And even if she wasn't, I run this place. No one's firing you over a lie." A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, nodding. I didn't want to let you down." Keanu smiled, resting a hand on the desk beside her. "Emily, you've never let me down. Not once." Her lip trembled. Then finally she nodded. Keanu stood up. "Here's what we're going to do," he said, his voice taking on that quiet authority that had made him a legend on screen and in real life. "First, you're getting a raise, enough to make sure you don't have to stress over money." Emily's head snapped up. "What?" "You heard me." Keanu's smile was faint but real. "Second, Olivia is done. If she comes near you, this cafe, or anyone here again, we'll handle it legally." Emily let out a small breathless laugh, still processing. "Keanu, you can't just..." "I can," he corrected, "and I will." She shook her head, disbelieving. "You don't have to do this." Keanu shrugged. "I protect my people." And just like that, the weight lifted from Emily's shoulders. The final nail in Olivia's coffin. Later that day, Keanu made a call. "Hey, it's Keanu." A pause, then a chuckle on the other end. "I was wondering when you'd call," came the voice of his corporate attorney. "I need you to handle something," Keanu said, leaning against the office desk. There's an ex-employee of mine, Olivia. She's been harassing one of my staff, trying to blackmail her." The lawyer hummed. "You want a cease and desist?" Keanu's jaw tightened. "And a restraining order." "Done." Keanu hung up. Olivia's games were over. A moment of peace. That night, Keanu sat in his car outside Morning Haven, watching through the glass windows as Emily laughed with another barista. Her shoulders finally relaxed. For the first time in weeks, he felt something settle inside him. He had come to Morning Haven expecting to fix a business. Instead, he had saved a family. And that was worth more than any paycheck. Keanu turns Morning Haven into a place for everyone. The battle with Olivia was over. The storm she had left behind was finally settling, but Keanu Reeves knew that firing a bad manager wasn't enough. If Morning Haven was going to survive, not just survive, but thrive, he had to do more than clean up the mess. He had to rebuild it from the ground up. The next morning, he called a staff meeting before the cafe opened. Emily, still adjusting to her role as assistant manager, stood near the front while the rest of the team gathered in the back, waiting, unsure of what came next. Some of them still looked cautious. Change had come fast, and not everyone was convinced it would last. Keanu leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "All right," he said, his voice steady, filling the quiet space. "I know things have been rough here. I know Olivia ran this place like a dictatorship, and I know some of you probably thought I'd fire half the staff and bring in a whole new crew." A few baristas exchanged nervous glances. "But that's not happening." Silence. Keanu let the words sink in. "I'm not here to tear this place apart. I'm here to fix it, and to do that, I need all of you on board." He pushed off the counter and started pacing, his mind sharp, his voice firm. "When I started Morning Haven, I wanted it to be more than a coffee shop. I wanted it to be a place where people felt welcome, a place where no one gets turned away because they don't look a certain way or because they're having a bad day, somewhere people can come when they need warmth, whether it's from a cup of coffee or just from knowing someone actually gives a damn." He stopped and let his gaze sweep over the staff. "Somewhere along the way we lost that." No one spoke. Keanu sighed, rubbing his jaw. "I let it happen. I got too comfortable running things from a distance. But that's done. We're not just fixing the damage Olivia did. We're making Morning Haven better than it's ever been." A bold new vision. Emily, standing by the espresso machine, lifted her chin slightly. "How?" she asked. Keanu turned to her. "By changing the way we run this place. Starting today, Morning Haven has a new policy. No one is turned away." Some of the baristas blinked in surprise. A few frowned. A young employee named Jake spoke up. "Wait, so like anyone can just walk in and get free coffee?" Keanu shook his head. "Not exactly, but if someone's down on their luck, if they need a meal or a place to sit for a while or just a little kindness, we don't send them out into the cold." A murmur spread through the staff. Some looked intrigued, others hesitant. Keanu wasn't done. "We're also adding a community board, a place where people can find job postings, local events, resources for people who need them." He met their eyes, one by one. Morning Haven is going to stand for something again, not just another chain coffee shop, but a place that actually makes a difference. The silence stretched. Then, slowly, Emily smiled. "That's kind of amazing," she said. A few nods followed. One of the newer baristas grinned. "I like it. Feels right." Jake crossed his arms. "And what if people take advantage? What if we lose money?" Keanu looked at him. "I'll cover it." Jake blinked. "Wait, you mean you?" Keanu nodded. "I'm cutting my own profits to make this happen. That means we can afford to offer free coffee and food to people who really need it. No one here is losing hours. No one is losing pay." For the first time, something shifted in the room. Doubt melted into understanding. The first test. Later that afternoon, Keanu sat near the back, watching as the new energy settled into the cafe. Customers came and went, but for the first time in a long time, the place felt different. Then the door swung open and a man stepped in. He was hesitant, his clothes worn, his shoes scuffed. Keanu recognized the look, the same look he had seen on the homeless man Olivia had turned away. Before he could move, Emily was already stepping forward. She didn't hesitate, didn't falter. She smiled. "Hey, welcome to Morning Haven. Can I get you a coffee?" The man blinked, his eyes wary. I don't have money." Emily shrugged. "That's okay. It's on us today." She reached for a cup, pouring a fresh brew. "Stay as long as you like." The man looked like he might cry. He nodded slowly, his hands trembling as he took the cup. Keanu watched, pride swelling in his chest. This was what Morning Haven was supposed to be. A legacy worth fighting for. As the evening rush picked up, Keanu leaned against the counter next to Emily. "You did good today," he told her. She smiled. "We all did." He nodded, then glanced around the cafe, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. This wasn't just a coffee shop anymore. It was something bigger, something real. And for the first time in years, Keanu Reeves knew exactly why he had started this place in the first place. Keanu's final decision, a new path forward. The transformation of Morning Haven was more than just a change in policy, it was a rebirth. In just a few short weeks, the coffee shop had gone from a toxic workplace under Olivia's rule to a thriving, welcoming space that felt alive. The once cold atmosphere was now filled with warmth, not just from the fresh coffee, but from the way the staff carried themselves. There was a lightness in their steps, a genuine connection with customers, and, most importantly, a purpose. Keanu Reeves sat at his usual corner table, sipping a black coffee. No disguise, no beard, just himself. For the first time in years, he felt like he had built something real again. The new policies had taken root. Customers who were struggling could now get a free cup of coffee and a warm meal. The community board near the entrance was already filling up with flyers, job postings, art nights, local resources for people who needed help. And the biggest change? The people. Emily had stepped fully into her role as assistant manager, her once nervous leadership growing into something strong. Clara, the new manager, had taken charge, blending efficiency with empathy in a way that made the team stronger than ever. Even the skeptical employees like Jake had come around. He was now the one explaining the new system to customers as if he had believed in it all along. Sales had rebounded, word had spread, other Morning Haven locations had started to adopt the same model. Keanu should have been thrilled. And yet, something inside him was shifting. The final conversation. As the evening rush slowed, Emily dropped into the seat across from Keanu, stretching her arms. "You know, this is the first shift in months that didn't feel like a battle." Keanu smiled. "That's because you're running the place now." She chuckled, shaking her head. "I wouldn't go that far." Then she studied him for a moment. "You seem, I don't know, different." Keanu exhaled, setting his cup down. "I've been thinking," he admitted. "I started Morning Haven because I wanted it to be this, a place that meant something. But somewhere along the way, I got lost in the business side of things, the expansion, the numbers. I stopped showing up." Emily tilted her head. "But you did show up." "Yeah," Keanu said, nodding slowly, "and that's why I know it's time for me to step back." Emily blinked. "What?" Keanu smiled, but there was a quiet finality to it. "I'm resigning as CEO." Emily's mouth fell open. "Wait, why? After everything we just built?" "Because you don't need me here anymore," Keanu said simply. "Morning Haven is stronger than it's ever been. It doesn't need me running it from some office miles away. It needs you, Clara, the people who actually make it what it is." Emily shook her head, still trying to process. "But what are you going to do?" Keanu leaned back in his chair, glancing around the cafe. The warm glow, the soft hum of conversation, the quiet feeling of home. "I don't know yet," he admitted, "but I know it's time for me to find out." A legacy that lasts. The next morning, Keanu made it official. He stepped down, handing Morning Haven over to the people who had fought for it. He didn't leave in some grand farewell, just a quiet goodbye, a handshake with Clara, a nod to Emily, and one last black coffee before walking out the door. As he stepped into the crisp morning air, he smiled. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't looking back. He was looking forward. Lessons from Morning Haven, what this story teaches us about life. The story of Morning Haven is more than just a tale about fixing a broken coffee shop. It's a lesson in leadership, integrity, and the power of kindness. Keanu Reeves didn't just step in as a CEO. He stepped in as a human being who saw a problem and chose to fix it. Not from a boardroom, but from the ground level. One of the biggest lessons from this story is that leadership isn't about authority, it's about responsibility. True leaders don't just sit back and give orders. They show up, they listen, and they act. They don't ignore problems or blame others. They take accountability, just like Keanu did when he went undercover to see the truth for himself. Another powerful takeaway is the importance of standing up against injustice, even in small ways. Whether it's a manager mistreating employees or someone turning away a person in need, the choice to stay silent makes us complicit. But one act of courage, one person speaking up, can change everything. Lastly, the story reminds us that success isn't just about profit, it's about purpose. Businesses, like people, thrive when they have a heart, and in life, the greatest legacies aren't built on money, they're built on impact.